10 months ago, I wrote a script for a video about the Stop Killing Games initiative. More specifically, the video was intended to be a response to Pirate Software's 2 videos he made where he addressed his problems with the initiative, and I was going to go point by point and dismantle his arguments and try to find merit where I could to his opinions. I didn't end up making that video. There's a few reasons why. Firstly, I wasn't confident enough. I didn't want to accidentally misrepresent the Stop Killing Games initiative and potentially be a reason that did the movement harm rather than good. Also, Pirate Software at the time was an almost universally beloved streamer, and making any video that would paint him in a bad light, and I think this video would have, could potentially draw hate from an infinitely bigger community my way, and end my YouTube career before it had even started. I mean, I would argue that it still hasn't really started, but that's okay, because this is not that video. I could potentially still make that video if I wanted to, but I feel like I'd be doing what's being done right now. If you want the drama, go watch Critikal or pick any other content creator that's currently jumping on this bandwagon. If you want the point-by-point rebuttal of Pirate Software's Stop Killing Game stuff, then go watch Accursed Farms or Ross's newest video where he addresses it. I got blocked by Pirate Software on Twitter the other day for this comment, and it kind of made me realize that I don't actually really care about the drama of it all. So much time and effort is going into tearing this dude a new one over what everyone should be caring about. So I want to look at this a little bit differently. So what is this video and why am I making it? Well, let's start off at the start. My name is Marcus, or I am better known as Trollisms. I have been playing video games for over 25 years now, and the first video game I ever remember playing was Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1. In fact, playing that game is one of my oldest memories in my life, and ever since then I have not stopped gaming. I love video games, and playing video games is one of my favorite things to do. It's why I'm trying to make a career out of playing and reviewing games. It doesn't matter if that pans out in the end or not. But what matters is that I have seen how gaming has evolved and changed over the years. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. I remember when the PlayStation 2 brought about a generational change to gaming, allowing for games to be bigger and better than they had ever been before. I remember when online gaming took off with Xbox Live and PSN. I remember the first time I was able to play a game of Halo 3 online against other people, God knows where in the world. I remember the countless hours I spent on that game. But I also remember when Bethesda tried to sell horse armor as a cosmetic microtransaction and how they were endlessly ridiculed and joked about for trying to get away with such a stupid and greedy idea. And then I watched as the jokes stopped being jokes and it became the norm. I remember when coloured gun skins and armor were achievements for putting in the hard yards, doing remarkable things that gave you a reward. But that's not the norm anymore. Skins are your reward if you manage to log in on your favourite game on the correct day and manage to have enough money in your bank account before the thing that you wanted disappears for an undetermined amount of time. That's if you're lucky enough and the thing that you wanted wasn't stuck in a loot box with a 1 in 100 chance of being unboxed. People say that gaming has gotten worse over the past few years, and I don't agree at all. Because even after 25 years of gaming, I'm still blown away by games like Expedition 33, Split Fiction, Wanderstop, Haste, and most recently The Alters. These are all excellent games that have released this year. It's gaming practices that have gotten worse. FOMO shops, loot boxes, battle passes, AAA games that are clearly unfinished being released, intrusive DRM, and I'm sure there's many others, but of course, the complete destruction of video games. So that the people who loved these games enough to engage with either some or all of the previous nonsense can't even play the game anymore. The reason I am making this video is because I love video games and I want gaming to be better. I think it can be better. And I'm tired of all the BS. And I remember a time when, yeah, maybe the games weren't better, but I could still pick up those games and play them, and they'll be exactly the same as the last time I booted them up, 10 or 15 or 20 years later. This video isn't a deconstruction of the whys and why nots of the Stop Killing Games. This video is why I, and I think many other people, care about the practice of killing games. This all started with The Crew, an open-world multiplayer racing game that had a single-player campaign that was completely shut down, rendering the entire game unplayable. This wasn't the first game to be shut down ever, but it was the spark that lit the powder keg that was the Stop Killing Games initiative. The Crew is by all means not the best game ever. It barely scrapes into being good if I'm being honest, but the whole map being kind of like a mini recreation of the entire USA is cool. Also, most importantly, the game was barely a multiplayer game, because I remember playing The Crew on the first day it was released. If you have ever played a decently hyped game with multiplayer elements, on the first day of release, you have almost certainly run into server errors or disconnections before. The Crew wasn't exactly a game that did gangbusters, but it did well enough to strain the Ubisoft servers to cause issues. Now, I do not have any footage of what happened here because this was 11 years ago. This is all in my memory. But when I played The Crew on the first day of release, the multiplayer did not work. The map of the USA, which was the free roam world between story missions and races, was meant to be populated by other real players, similar to Forza Horizon. But the servers were so busted that I rarely, and then after a while, never saw anyone else on the roads. Races wouldn't populate with other players like they were meant to, so I just played the game as if it were a single player experience. The Crew, to me, was a single player game. The fact that it is now gone and I cannot play it legally, despite the fact that I bought it, is really stupid. In fact, it shouldn't be legal. And that's where Stop Killing Games comes in. It's an initiative to stop publishers and developers rendering games completely unplayable once they can't or no longer want to officially support their games. The Crew is the example used because it is the most indefensive example of a game being shut down. But the Stop Killing Games initiative isn't aiming to just save a game like The Crew. It's aiming to save everything that it can. Because really, why shouldn't you be able to play a game that you paid for whenever you like? Why shouldn't the person who paid thousands of dollars on needless skins be able to look at their cool PNGs whenever they like? Why shouldn't the person who spent hundreds of hours immersed in a world that they loved be able to return to it whenever they like? I'm making it sound less nuanced than it is, and if the initiative were passed in the EU, then it could change the gaming landscape forever. One of the biggest arguments against Stop Killing Games is the technical aspect. Could it make live service games harder to develop? Sure it could, but I don't see that as a bad thing. Just look at Concord. $200+ million evaporated into nothing. There isn't even a game to show for it anymore because the game got shut down. I know it wasn't a good game, but I am more than sure that there are some people out there that liked it and would like to play it if they could. Yeah, sure, it would make it harder, especially for indie developers in particular, to develop live service games, and my answer to that is I do not see that as a bad thing either. It's not that they can't, but live service games are a massive undertaking, and if you don't have a contingency for if things do not go as planned, then you should not be making a live service game in the first place. And if your plan is to hit the off button, I do not believe for a second that you cared about that game from the beginning. This may sound harsh, and that's because it is. Games are meant to be played, and if you made a game that cannot be played, then what the hell are you doing? I don't believe that developers who spent hundreds of hours of coding and artists who spent hundreds of hours of crafting want to see the worlds that they created locked away forever. Look, you may tell me it's unfair for games currently out to adhere to this potential legislation, and you would be right, but it wouldn't be retroactive. Although maybe for certain bigger cases it probably should be. But I believe if the game needs to be left in a playable state is something that is baked into the design of a video game from the beginning, then it will be easier to implement. I understand that it isn't as simple as pressing a switch and hey presto, the game lives. And I do not believe that it is impossible for most, if not all, games developed going forward to have a way of still being playable. But it is, in my opinion, criminal that at the very least, consumers aren't being informed of what the end-of-life plan is for a game when it goes offline. I mean, sometimes it is, but they are buried within a 40-page long EULA that nobody is realistically going to read. I want you to think of the biggest live service or multiplayer game that you know of. What comes to mind? Fortnite? League of Legends? World of Warcraft? What happens when one of the big ones dies? No, really, what happens? Like, you may think that they are too big to fail, but you never know. Let's say World of Warcraft dies. We know that people have been able to create player-owned and ran servers, and there would be an audience that could keep that game alive in some kind of state. But what happens to all of the characters from the main game, like the thousands of hours spent reaching milestones, collecting rare items, the history of the character? Gone. League of Legends and Fortnite are very similar. Billions of dollars worth of skins. Gone. These games are extremely popular, and I don't doubt someone out there would find a way to emulate or get these games running if needed. But you can't tell me that the games that generated billions of dollars couldn't fund a small development team to find a way to create a version of the game that runs offline or via peer-to-peer. A game that generated enough money to make another 100 more of the same game from scratch. I get generally is difficult or impossible for smaller or less successful games that are currently out to retroactively put in a way to fix their game on death's door, and that sucks. But the practice of killing games should never have been a thing to begin with. I have said many times that a dead game benefits nobody, and I mean that. I remember in 2020 a little game blew up out of nowhere called Among Us. Not a lot of people know that that game didn't actually come out in 2020, but the game actually released in 2018. On the Steam charts, you can clearly see that for the first 8 months of its life, Among Us never peaked over 100 total concurrent players. Could you imagine if the developers called it quits and killed the game before it ever hit it big? Now the developers use the insane amount of money that they made off of that game to help fund indie developers to help make their games. I'll be the first to admit that Among Us is a rare case, but if a game is completely destroyed, the chances of any kind of revival go straight to zero. All it takes is for one big content creator or one viral video and your game could come back. I mean, even if you have officially ended support for your game, it might still be on stores that people could buy, and developers could get revenue out of that. If all of that didn't convince you, my last point on why we should stop the destruction of video games is because it deserves to be preserved as art. I am a firm believer that video games are an art form. Don't believe me? Go play Journey. Some people may forget, but Journey is a game that has an online element to it. Could you imagine if the developers of Journey made the game unplayable because they couldn't run the service for the multiplayer element of the game anymore? We would lose one of the most beautiful games ever made, and it'd be a travesty. I know a lot of this video is just me asking hypothetical questions of things that have not happened yet to the void. Oh wait, some of this actually has already happened, a few times actually. Because I remember Battleborn, I remember Atlas Reactor, I remember Master X Master, I remember Nosgoth, I remember The Culling, I remember Terra, I remember Concord, I remember Wildstar, I remember Maple Story 2, I remember Lawbreakers, and I remember The Crew. It's too late for those games, but it's not too late for the next one. I remember a time where if you bought a game, and that game was yours for as long as you wanted it. Sure, gaming has evolved over the years, and yeah, the types of games we play have changed and how we play them. But what I think shouldn't change is that we should always own the games we buy, own the things we buy on them, and be able to play them whenever we like. Yeah, maybe if it was a multiplayer game, it won't be the same as it was back in the golden years. And maybe all that's left is an empty world meant for hundreds of players that is now populated just by you. And that's okay. If someone out there wanted to play an MMO like RuneScape without the players, why shouldn't they be allowed to? I mean, Iron Men kind of already do that anyway. Look, I don't have all of the answers. I wish I did. I wish I could predict exactly how everything would play out and find the solution that would make gaming better for everyone. But I can't. There are plenty of gaming practices that I dislike that would be curbed or stopped by the Stop Killing Games initiative. I do not think this solution will work for everyone. It may even cause some problems. There will be a period of hardship, and then I think the market will shift to accommodate, like it always does. I think it is fine to not agree with the Stop Killing Games initiative, and I think it is perfectly fine to disagree with me here. I just want gaming to be better, and I think it can be better. I think the Stop Killing Games initiative has a good shot of doing that, and that's why I care about Stop Killing Games. If the past 15 years of gaming has shown us anything, it shows us that if left unchecked, the practices of gaming aren't going to get better just by themselves. I mean, the practice of killing games, FOMO, loot boxes, everything I mentioned before made gaming feel significantly worse, is going to continue to get worse unless we can push back. And I think we do need to push back. And that's why I care about Stop Killing Games. Because really, why can't games be forever? Thanks for watching this video. Please let me know what you thought in the comments, and I will try to answer as many questions as possible if anyone has any. Thanks to my YouTube members Controlled Killer, Yellow, Melodia, and Jingles. Absolute legends. Your support means the world to me. I'm gonna go back to actually playing video games, and more actual reviews will be coming soon. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all next time.